Hello and a very good day, Lexi here. Decided to make a tiny video about the Unity card play library that I posted a couple of months ago. We're just going to see real quick the functionalities it has and then look over the code. Yeah, on my screen right now you can see that I have started a project in which I have the library. I've shown it before exactly what you can do with it, but basically it has tiny features that you might need in order to implement your own card playing game. And they're all controlled through a central place in a card container. Really, you would only need to set up a container in your scene, and this should be of whatever dimensions you want for it, and then you would add your script to it and start configuring stuff. I've shown in different videos as well what kind of configuration options there are, but we can go really quickly into some more details yet again. So basically there's an option to force fit the cards to your container. If you do not, they will just take as much space as they need on your screen and even possibly go off of the screen. There's an alignment option, and if you don't have too many cards, they will actually start aligning, or if you force fit them, the alignment won't be that obvious because they're in the container anyway, and they're being force fit to the container. Then there's the possibility of repositioning or not different cards. So as I drag on my card, if I let it go, it's going to go back to its original position. But if I allow card repositioning, then you see that as I move it, all the other cards move around and they give it the option to just go to a different place. There's the possibility of configuring some rotation on the card if you want to get this fanning effect. And it's really, this is just the angle between the let's say outermost card and the middle. So if at the middle you would have 0, on the leftmost card you would have 15 in this case, for example. There's some height displacement, again, maximum value that you can displace cards on the y-axis simply so that you achieve the fan effect if you want that. There are options for zoom configuration, and I'll be honest, I don't use zoom that much anymore. I'll tell you maybe a little bit about it afterwards, but basically you have the option to do different things as you zoom on your card. So one of those things is, as you've noticed, to reset the rotation as you're hovering it. So even if I go for a card that's on the side, you see that it starts actually rotating. You can configure the rotation speeds for every single thing in here, and a bunch of other speeds as well. There's a category that is dedicated just to animation speeds. And in terms of zooming in, there's a possibility of switching up the multiplier. You see, I had 1.1, but if I do 1.5, then it's going to just zoom in a lot more. Maybe that is something that you might want. And you can also shift the Y position, for example, if the card doesn't fit or you want it to be higher than it is right now. You see, it's just dragging it up as I'm zooming it. So there's a bunch of tiny options like that in the library. From this point of view. Then there's the possibility of defining an area where you want to play the card. So you might have noticed that I can drag the card, and if I let it go here, it's just going to go back to my hand. That happens precisely because I did not play it in a playable area. And I'll show you how you switch that up as well. Let me maybe get this not be as crazy, because I saw that it was going, well, maybe something like this. And yeah, if you play it in the play area, then it is going to disappear, and it uses some Unity events so that it allows you to hook into it and detect when someone plays a card, or detect when a card is hovered or unhovered. And I'll even show you an example of using that. I created a highlight effect where when you highlight one of the cards, you get more details about it. And that uses these events, basically these Unity events. Okay, let's move on real quick to the code. Hopefully this switched my screens. Honestly, there's only two classes that really matter. It's the card container, which is the behavior that you add to your own container. And then there's the card wrapper, which is a behavior that gets added in by the container itself. So you don't have to do it. In fact, we can maybe switch back here and see that whenever you have, I had created the card you see here on the left hand side that is not part of the container. Let me just enable it real quick. So you see that there is a card, it's not part of the container, but even now at runtime, if I do add it to the container will start taking ownership of it and will treat it as a normal card. And the original card didn't really have anything special about it. It was just a rect transform with an image. But now it received the additional things that might be needed so that it is properly used by the container itself. So it has a canvas because it needs to have a sorting order, because if it doesn't have a sorting order, you don't know which card should be on top of a different one. You see that as I hover it, the sorting order changes, and all those things are taken care of dynamically. But you have also from the container itself, you have a bunch of options to set up what are the values in the sorting order, what is the value of the least priority card, let's say, what is the value of the sorting order as you zoom on one of these cards. So there's a bunch of options about dealing with that. Okay, good. Let's go into the code now. So in the code, first thing, maybe we can go over the card container. The first part of the card container is obviously about configuration. So there's a bunch of configuration options. Some are just slapped in here as either booleans or floats or other direct values like that. And some are basically bundled together in some configuration classes. You see here a zoom config class. This is really just a class which is serialized and has a bunch of options inside of it. It was just an easier way of dealing with all the configuration options, and also with having the ability to pass this class to the card wrappers themselves, so the individual cards. Maybe we can go back to Unity yet again, and I wanted to show you that the cards themselves, if I just click on one of the cards, they receive this card wrapper script. So they receive the script, you don't have to do it, it gets done automatically, but they now start having access to all of these options, and that's how basically they will know to properly use them at runtime. Good. Going back in here, I said that we have a lot of options in the very beginning, a bunch of configuration. There's an initialization step that will be done so that for every single one of the cards they get set up properly. By getting set up, I really mean that they just receive all the components that they need, and also the wrapper that gets added to the card is past the components that it needs. You might notice I added the method add other components if needed. This is just so that it takes care of adding a canvas. If a canvas is not present on the element, the library itself does not assume you have anything by default. It will add everything that it needs other than a rect transform. So it needs to have a rect transform just for it to be a UI object. That is about it. And there's just a couple of methods that are interesting. The update cards, which I would say is not even all that performant. It would normally not even need to be called this often, but I have not had any kind of performance issues with it, so I just left it in right in the update method from Unity, and it just goes through the cards. It establishes if they are in the right position, it establishes if they have the correct rotation, if they are on the right UI layer so that they properly show on top of each other. And it also updates the card order if you have the right to reposition cards. If you set up the option to reposition cards, it's going to set up the card order as well. So other than that, it really does not do much more than expose also some events. And the events we can find in the events folder. Whenever a card is destroyed, an event is triggered. Whenever you hover or unhover a card, and whenever a card is played, you get a Unity event. That makes it very easy for you to hook into, and I actually have two examples of doing that. So first implementation in which we can see how the events applied by the libraries can be used is this demo card destroyer, which just listens for the card played event and destroys it. So if we check it out in game, you will see that I have in here a card destroyer, and it is hooked into the event supplied by the library. So on card played, my card destroyer will call its method on card destroy. And if I run the game, you can see dragging the card in the area destroys it. It disappears. But if I were to remove the card destroyer, then dragging the card doesn't destroy it anymore. There's nobody to listen to that event. There is also the possibility to just destroy the card on play, which is offered directly by the library, but maybe you don't want to do this. Maybe you want to do something with the card before destroying it, or maybe you want to test whether you can even play the card in that area. So in this situation, you wouldn't want the library to destroy it. You would do that yourself, but it is possible. And the second example of that is the clone preview manager that I made. So I have a tiny preview manager here. What it does is it hooks into the card hover and card unhover events. And whenever you hover a card, it will create and then cache a clone of that card. And it will apply some transformations to it. So the transformation is you can decide on a vertical position, you can decide on a new scale for it, and you can write what will be the sorting layer for it so that it displays on top of other things. I'll show you the configuration for it. You've seen here that I already have my clone preview manager set up, and I will just enable it. And sure enough, when I hover on a card, it will create a clone of it, and it will show it a bit larger. And this is actually fairly common. Games like Hearthstone do something like this because they want to have very tiny cards on the screen. They don't want to occupy a lot of space, but at the same time, they want to present a lot of details. And so maybe some explanations of what the card does and whatnot. And yeah, I set it up so that it disappears when you start dragging it. Okay, I think the final point that I wanted to show was in fact about switching out the play areas. So you see that we have a red play area here, but we can actually enable another one that I have created, which is a lot larger. And the point is that there is a configuration option to define what is the play area in the script for the card container itself. So I'm just going to drag the play area in here. And now, whenever we play a card in this new area, it's going to get played. But if you play it outside, it's still not going to get played, basically. That's just switching out the play areas. Someone told me they would like maybe to have the possibility of defining multiple play areas. That's actually not very complicated to do. I just did not need it for my game. If you do, maybe leave a comment and I will implement it. It should be fairly straightforward. Okay, that is about it. Thank you very much for watching and see you later.